Alrighty, let's go ahead and hop on in here, shall we? Alright. How's it going, y'all? This is Wes, and today we're gonna play a little bit of Final Fantasy XIV. Hey, whoever would have thought. Now, I wanted to try something a little bit different this time. So first of all, good news. This should be, hopefully, one of my last streams with my current mic. So, yeah, I have ordered a new mic. You know, we'll probably have to go AWOL for a couple of days to get it set up and test it and all of that good stuff. But yeah, hey, we finally got I finally got a new mic, so that's my Christmas present to myself more than anything else. It's a really nice, getting rid of this old Blue Yeti and moving up to a Shure MV7. So should be a pretty significant step up, and hopefully doesn't have nearly as much in terms of just trucks passing by, in terms of the weird static. I don't know if it's my compressor settings or what I've got it on, but I notice that whenever I start getting getting a little too loud, it doesn't even necessarily get loud. It starts to like crackle a little bit. So I don't know what the deal is. I mean, you guys know me and my audio issues, so hopefully this'll take care of at least a little bit of it. So I'm pretty excited. And should be arriving tomorrow or Thursday, I don't know. Whenever it gets here, it shouldn't take me too long to hopefully try and get it set up, and we'll do a test stream at some point. So yeah, really excited about that. So that's my big news. How about y'all? You have a good Christmas? Did you have a happy holidays? It was okay here. A lot of kids running around, very loud. I don't know. I'm not big on the family gathering stuff. You know, it's just my family, I guess. But you know, after a couple days break for the holidays and whatnot, we are finally back and doing some more streams and ready to go at it. So today I was gonna do something a little bit different. Let me bring up my YouTube studio here. But I thought, you know, we just kind of hang out and chill today, and I thought I would maybe do a little bit in terms of answering questions. No, what world was that? Answering questions about roleplay. Hey, why not? I finally got Sage on my Elezen, so didn't really need to hop in there and do anything with her for a little bit. Who knows, I might hop over on her and actually do a little bit of gaming later. But yeah, I thought I would go through and answer some questions about roleplay. You know, the RP guide, thanks a ton for everyone that's watched it. You know, I really appreciate the support. If you guys are just finding the channel, like, subscribe, you know the deal, super thanks, whatever you guys feel like. Um, but there were a lot of questions in the comments and whatnot, and just other things that I've heard, you know, through Discords and whatnot, from people who have watched the video. So I thought I'd go through and answer them. You know, the video guide is just very, very basic. It's like a baby's first roleplay guide, right? You know, it's meant to kind of supplement the World of Warcraft roleplay video that I did a few years ago, and it just kind of covers the basics in terms of like what is role play, and you know, how does it work for each individual game. The WoW one's more focused on like what exactly is role play, proper etiquette for posting, that kind of thing, where the Final Fantasy one is a little bit more specific to Final Fantasy in terms of like how to set up your UI, what exactly, you know, the venues are like, and housing, how that affects things, you know, little things like that. But it's not super in depth. So I have had a few questions and a few comments about it over the course of, you know, past couple of months. So I thought we'd go through and kind of look at a couple of them. Welcome to the quicksand, everybody. I'll look at a couple of them. If you guys have any questions, I'm basically turning this into like an open question QA forum here. So, where better to do it than the Balmung's quicksand? And who knows, if you guys have questions about the quicksand, we can throw that in there too. Let me turn this on so I'm not sitting next to anyone. Okay, so all the tables are actually taken right now. So we'll find some place to just lean against the wall. It is packed tonight. Yeah, everyone's on the holiday break and enjoying their time in the game after the 6.3 live letter. I think a lot of people are getting back into it. I know I am. I'm super excited for 6.3. Thanks to everyone that watched my reaction video. I'm sad that I wasn't able to watch it live. But hey, we made it work in the end. And a couple couples here. Okay. So yeah, let me go through the comments here and try and see if we've got any good questions, right? Let's see. You know, there were a couple that I picked out pretty early on. Probably the biggest thing that I saw was just you know, about roleplay in general, and about trying to get started in it, and really how to do that. Yeah, it seems like there's a few people that have had some issues trying to find roleplay, or they feel like they're role playing and it's not really going anywhere. They're not really getting any hits or anything like that. So I feel like that's kind of a nice baseline to kind of start with, because it's pretty similar to real life when you think about it. You know, you're in a big community. Everyone here, they're real players, right? So it really is like going to a bar and trying to interact with real people in real life, right? So if I'm just sitting here standing around in my nice little sage glam, you know, maybe I'll get a couple of people coming up and saying, "Hey, nice glam," or something like that. But to really expect someone to just kind of walk up and start RPing, it's not super realistic, because there's just so many options here. I mean, you got this massive crowd. This is just what I can load in. There's, you know, all kinds of people over there and all the way around the ring. It's super packed, right? So why would anyone come up to this one little blue aura and try role playing, right? It might happen occasionally, but it's not super common, right? So, you know, if you're wanting to start role playing, and you know, you read the guide, you got your UI set up, and at this point you're really just kind of looking into getting into the nitty-gritty details of it. Best place to start is like, really, how do you start role playing? Do you do walk-ups? What do you do in that case? So role play is really one of those things where it's kind of like, you really get what you put into it, right? If you want to role play and you want to make those connections, you want to start networking, it's really up to you to kind of approach people and initiate those conversations. Sometimes they're not going to go anywhere. Sometimes, you know, especially in the quicksand, it's the quicksand. You might miss more than you actually get hits. But you know, it doesn't matter if it's in a video, in the quicksand, wherever it happens to be out in the world, you're going to get what you put into it. So if you're having trouble trying to find roleplay, or it seems like people are ignoring you, it's kind of, you know, one of those things where you got to kind of consider, you know, how are you approaching it? Are you making those conversations? And, you know, if you're the one initiating and it's still not working out, okay, then there's probably something else going on. But if you're just sitting here at the wall of the quicksand and hoping people are going to come up and roleplay to you, probably not going to be the case. In my case, you know, I spend a lot of time here just AFKing and watching YouTube or whatever, and just kind of, you know, people watching. It is very, very rare that I have anyone come up and try to roleplay with me. At most, it usually ends up being one of those situations where someone whispers me saying, hey, nice glam, and maybe trying to start, you know, a conversation from there. But being in the quicksand, if someone comes up and says, hey, nice glam, you know, I shoot them, you know, a hey, thanks, you know, I do appreciate it. People like my glam. Yeah, I should probably change it up. Change to my mage. There we go. And, you know, if people do genuinely like the glam, then that's great. But usually if you know, I say thanks or whatever, and then they try and continue the role playing, it's usually for one reason, and we'll get to that, get to that a little bit later. But like nice, hey, nice glam is basically like the role player's equivalent of hey, you up. You know, you get those texts at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, hey, you up. That's pretty much what hey, nice glam really comes down to. It's very rare that I have anyone comment on my adventure played or anything like that. So, so yeah, it's not super common to just have people come up and walk up to you. Now, if you're going to a venue, that's a little bit different. We can get into venues a little bit later. Venues are probably the best way to actually meet people, make the connections, and really get into role play. This standing out in the world, I mean, half of these people are tourists, they're AFK, they're, you know, doing whatever they're doing. Most of the people in the quicksand are probably not there to actually roleplay. Maybe if they're sitting down at one of the tables with like a couple members of their FC or something. Okay. And so that's kind of like a good way to kind of start, and kind of the mindset to get into it, right? And again, if you are initiating and you're still running into those problems, well, then it's probably something where you need to evaluate further. I mean, what kind of character do you have? You know, roleplay is one of those things where, yeah, you can make pretty much any character you want, but it's just like in real life, there's a billion different people out there, and some of them are not going to be treated the same way as others, right? There's always going to be biases with the real people and, you know, behind the screen. If you're a Lalafell who's, you know, super cutesy and lol random and that kind of thing, kind of like the gnomes and the goblins would be in World of Warcraft, chances are you're not going to get as many hits. You know, that kind of hyperactive, you know, random, you know, random speech style, that kind of thing, it doesn't go over super well in roleplay. We've seen it a billion times. It's nothing new. People are kind of tired of it, that kind of thing. So, you know, if you're still having issues trying to find roleplay and trying to make those connections, and you're the one initiating, then it's time to evaluate, you know, what kind of character are you, and you know, what kind of stuff are you actually saying. You know, there's always going to be, it's a very big thing in roleplay communities, you know, separating in character from out of character. You know, if I'm an asshole in game, that doesn't necessarily mean I might be an asshole in real life. But, you know, treating these characters as real people, why would anyone roleplay with someone that's constantly insulting or so on, right? So maybe that's an issue. So there could be a bunch of different things. It's kind of hard to answer that in a broad sense, just because it's kind of case specific. But, you know, that's kind of a good way to start. I mean, that was probably the most common comment that I had, is like, oh, I tried role playing and they're super exclusive, not super welcoming, anything like that. And like I said, it could be a bunch of different reasons, but more than likely it falls into one of those two things. Either you're not approaching enough and you're just trying to wait for people to come to you, or you've got a character that's not super easy to role play with. You know, you've got to got to use some common sense with it. If you can go out and you want to role play, you know, a named character or something like that, go right ahead. If you're good at it, who knows? Maybe someone will go to it. But again, it's one of those situations where, you know, use some common sense in terms of your characters. What kind of people would you like to interact in real with in real life? Um, and then kind of take that into account when you're thinking what kind of character you want to play, right? If it's someone that you would not personally enjoy being around in real life, probably people are not going to want to roleplay with you either, right? So that's a decent way to start. Let's see. Honestly convinced this game was very reserved for friend groups. Yeah, it's not. The community is welcoming when it comes to new players and masses, but when it comes to individuals, you're on your own. I mean, that's just like real life, man. Like, you know, again, you gotta put into it what you want out of it, right? Let's see here. Let's see. Kind of format did I use for my card? I honestly have no idea. It was just one of the pre-made templates, and then I just kind of went through and made it. But speaking of cards, you know, that's still kind of the main way to make those connections. So it's probably pretty important to kind of talk about your adventure plate here, right? So your adventure plate is probably, if you're looking for roleplay and you want to meet new people, your adventure plate is probably the most important aspect of it. You don't get a whole lot of space, so it's kind of hard to really make a big background. So what most people do is they just add those hooks. In my case, you know, I've got the card, and that's where all the in-depth information is going to be displayed. Quick listing about my OOC stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm always looking to raid. I'm primarily going to be a raider, right? But for other people, it might be what kind of roleplay they're looking at. Are they okay with like dark or serious roleplay? Are they looking for more comedic? What kind of partners do they want if you're into that kind of roleplay? That kind of stuff. You'll see some. It's not quite as bad as Goldshire, but you'll see some stuff in the adventure play. But again, that's because that's what they want known about their character right off the bat. This is basically the first thing people see about you, and it lets them know immediately whether or not your type of roleplay or your type of character is one that they might be willing to interact with, right? So I don't have a super RP focused one right now. Haven't really had a chance to do it lately, but yeah, you know, use this space to try and put whatever information you can, and add those hooks in there if you can. Very, very important. Something I didn't really talk enough about in the video, but it's something that's really, it's your first introduction to other people, right? That's like the first thing they're going to be checking out when they're looking at your character. You know, do they like your character design? Cool. Would I be interested in role playing with them? Check their adventure plate. So that's kind of where to go from there, right? And of course, everyone's going to be a little bit different. You know, I tend to like more casual walk-up role play. You know, I'm obviously not in an FC right now or anything like that, so I don't have like a dedicated group to play with. So most of my time is going to venues, doing the walk-up RP, interacting with, you know, random people out in the world. So your experience might be a little bit different if you do have a dedicated FC or something along those lines. You know, again, this is just me. This is my one person opinion about Balmung. Everyone's going to have slightly different experiences based on what you're looking to get out of it, right? These are just kind of like general statements. There's not like any dedicated like rule set to how to do most of this stuff. Most of what I'm going to cover is just kind of things that have been standardized over the course of several years, right? But you know, there's always ways to kind of break the mold and try things up, try different things, right? Second, let me report RMT activity. All right, there we go. All right, but yeah, you know, let's take a look at a couple of them here. You got Chell over there. So yeah, let's take a look at their adventure plane. Yeah, so not a whole lot of info. Probably just AFKing, right? Enko Musa. All right. See, this one gives you a lot of information, just like right off the bat. I'm sorry, Tenko. I should have hid the surnames. I don't know if it does that for adventure plates, but it gives you immediately a bunch of information about them. What they're into, what their pronouns are, their age, what kind of RP issue are they into, and then are they okay with 18 plus. WE/T means walk up tells. So if you put that on there, it means you're open to walk ups, right? So yeah, maybe, you know, if you are interested in walk ups and you're not having much luck getting people to walk up to you, put that in your profile. What? WT. WUT, there you go, what? Stands for walk up tells. So it means you're open to randoms messaging you and trying to initiate a conversation. Not everyone's into that. Some people do not like walk ups. So that could be, you know, a little bit of miscommunication there if you don't have that in your profile. Maybe people don't know that it's okay to walk up to you and talk. Again, I don't think it would be something that would necessarily help out a ton in the quicksand, but it will in venues and whatnot. All right. So there you have that. Let's see here. All right, so entry fees for joining an FC. So it's from Graveyard Operations. So I mentioned in the tutorial video that some venues have entry fees. That is not a fee to join the FC. Who knows if most of them are even recruiting, right? So the entry fees are kind of like a door charge for these venues, right? So let's take a look here. And you got Cat's Diner and whatnot. I doubt a diner would have entry fees or something like that. But some of these bigger clubs like Galaxy, I don't know if they necessarily have an entry fee, but you will run into it occasionally. A lot of the bathhouses have entry fees. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Usually it's a small fee. It's like 1,000 to 5,000 gil. It's like a door charge at an actual venue in real life, right? You should never pay to join an FC. You should join an FC because you like playing with them, right? The entry fees are just to enter the venue for an RP event. Couple reasons for that. Usually for smaller venues, it's because they have a smaller staff and they want to discourage people from flooding in. So sometimes that entry fee can help out. For a lot of the larger venues, a lot of those entry fees are to help pay for the staff. A lot of these venues, if you work at one of these places, a lot of times you will get a cut of what they make over the course of a night. Especially some of, you know, the venues, right? So it could go to paying the staff. It could go towards giveaways. It could go to renovating or improving the FC. If it's a regular venue that's open a lot, they might be changing stuff around to try and make it better for the public. That kind of stuff. Like I said, it's usually a small amount. So it's not to join the FC. It's just to go into the venue. And like I said, it's usually not a big deal. But yeah, it's usually to support that particular venue. More common is going to be real gil fees for stuff on the menu. So if you go up to the bar and enter an RP drink, they might charge like 5,000 gil per drink or something like that. Most of the time for venues like that, it's because they're actually crafting something to give you. So they're actually crafting like a craftsman syrup or something like that, and then that is your Mai Tai or something, you know, whatever is on their menu, right? So that's to cover the actual crafting costs for it. And then of course the bartender probably takes a cut or whatever. So yeah, that's what the entry fees are. It sounds like kind of scummy, but when you actually experience it in person, it starts to make a lot of sense. It's really not a big deal at all. You know, I paid plenty of fees to enter bathhouses and stuff like that. And yeah, usually for like bathhouses and stuff, it's actually to discourage people from going in. It prevents people essentially from making like level 1 alts and going specifically for, you know, Yeah. So it encourages people who are actually on their mains or actually part of that server to go. And again, it's also discouraged people from playing or flooding the video if it's only got like 2 staff members that night, right? Um, so yeah, it's all for a purpose. And a lot of these have pretty good giveaways and whatnot. So a lot of the larger venues will charge, the $5,000 or 5,000 gil door fee because they're going to be giving away a bunch of mounts or something like that at the end of the night or whatever. It's whatever. It's not a big deal. I mean, I've got 11 million gil. 5,000 is not going to hurt me. The more expensive stuff, usually for real gil, is the more adult stuff. Which kind of leads me, I think there was a comment about this earlier. Okay, yeah, here we go. From Color Splashes. Yo, guys, anyone know what roleplay statuses mean? Like, I know role players using looking to meld for ERP. What is LFP? Okay. Yeah, so that's what a lot of the statuses mean. And when it comes to the statuses, you know, sprouts versus looking to meld versus all of that, check the cards, check the venue's card to see if they've got anything going on. Usually they'll have an explanation of what the different statuses mean, but it'll be a little different for every venue. Usually one of them means staff member but not available for hire. Sometimes it'll mean available for hire but for just chatting, if that makes sense. And then one is ERP. That's usually what one of them is. But which one is which is sometimes, sometimes it's looking for meld, sometimes it's looking for party. It's different for every venue. I would say probably the green status, the looking for meld, is the most common that I've seen in terms of if you wanted to hire them for a session or whatever. So that's probably the most common, but they switch it up all the time. Again, check the cards. A good venue should have all of that information in the cards. But yeah, usually one of them is also going to be staff member, but not available for hire, or only available for chatting or something like that because they're working. It's usually like the bartenders or whatever. Just kind of lets you know who you could talk to for any issues, for any questions, that kind of thing. Because, some of these venues, especially some of these lounges and whatnot, they get super packed. And it can be hard to kind of tell who's who. Now that wanderers and travelers are a thing, a lot of these venues hire role players that are not necessarily in the FC. They might be from another server, something like that, but they work there on those days. So they use those status symbols so you can differentiate who's actually working, because it's not always easy to tell right off the bat when you walk into a venue and there's just a flood of people. You got the bartenders are usually the easiest because they're behind the bar, but if they have to run out and give drinks to someone or something like that, it's easy to get lost in the crowd. So that's really the main reason that they do it, more than anything like that. When it comes to the a hiring for an hour or two kind of thing, most of the time everyone that's open to that is going to have a profile on the card anyways, so you would be able to check that and get more information in terms of hiring someone. The use of the statuses themselves is just completely for line of sight purposes more than anything else. So yeah, that's kind of what that is. Let's see here. I had another couple. Yeah, see, here's another one. Try getting involved in Final Fantasy XIV RPing community, and it's inclusive, not open to new players, and unless you have a friend group or partner that can bring to RP with you, you'll be ignored and not approached. Yeah, so that's what I was kind of discussing a little bit earlier. Again, you get what you put into it. Usually comments like that, I see comments like that fairly regularly, and I would say probably 90% of the time after interacting with someone like that in game, I can tell you exactly why people don't RP with them. So yeah, take it with a grain of salt. Usually people aren't RPing for a reason, right? You know, when it comes to open world stuff like this, you know, this hanging out in the quicksand or going to a venue or something like that, people are there to RP. If they wanted exclusivity and wanted private RP, that's what their FCs and guild halls are for. They've got friend groups they'll be able to do that with anytime they want. Usually there's a pretty clear separation in it. So if you're not getting RP, um, in the open world, and you go on YouTube and make a comment like that, I have a pretty good idea of why you're not getting much RP, and it's probably not because people aren't willing, right? We'll just put it that way, right? Same and worse for me. I play female row. Everyone hates female row, and then Sid the chat here. I sure as shit don't. Right on. Right on, Sid. It is true that some classes do get more RP than others, especially from a certain type of player. Yeah, take that as you will. Usually, I don't see a ton of fem rows or male rows for that matter. Really, come to think of it, that's not necessarily exclusive to RP. That's really game wide. Like I think female rows are like the least played class in the game, if I remember right. Not just RP servers, but really everywhere, right? So it's not necessarily exclusive to it, but it is true that certain types of races and genders do get more RP than others, and usually there's certain assumptions about other types of genders and races. I've talked about it a lot before in other past streams, but I'll go over it again right now, just because it is the RP stream, right? So the important thing to kind of keep in mind here, probably more than anything else, is a lot of role players and a lot of people that first started on Crystal and really built this as part of the community. It really became big as part of the WoW exodus. And this is before Shadowbringers. I mean, people had been slowly trickling over here to Balmung probably since, I would say, late Cataclysm. Whenever Heavensward had just come out, I think that was Cataclysm, right? And the reason they came over is because a lot of the people here are part of the LGBTQ plus community, right? And they felt that they had been pushed off of World of Warcraft, got too toxic over there, and they were looking for a new game to play and kind of build their own community up, right? And because of that, there are certain expectations when it comes to playing certain races. We'll leave that to your interpretation, right? Because I don't want to get bonked by YouTube more than anything else. But you can probably figure it out. There are a lot of trans characters here, a lot of trans players here, and that's perfectly great. That's fine. You know, I love how inclusive the community is, right? But when you're first starting out in roleplay, if you don't know a whole lot of like the norms when it comes to certain types of roleplay, it can be very confusing. So just kind of keep that in mind if you are looking to play certain classes or something like that. Now, on the flip side of that, if you really like playing a female rogue, or you like playing a Thailander or something like that, and you just want to be a regular, normal female rogadin, and then people come at you with these assumptions, right? Feel free to stamp it out. Feel free, I mean, there's polite ways to do it and not, but, you know, make it known that this is your character and you want to play this type of character, right? So kind of keep that in mind too. Don't feel discouraged from playing something that you want to play because of expectations around certain races or certain genders or certain classes, whatever happens to be the case. Just know that you'll probably deal with a little bit more from certain races or certain characters than with others, right? There's a billion bunny boys, a billion bunny girls, billion cat girls. Again, it's just like the rest of the game on the non-RP servers, right? You're just going to have a lot more of those because they're cutesy and anime and whatever happens to be, and a lot of people are only looking for one thing, right? But like me, I take my character pretty seriously, right? Like, for me, personally, like, my aura here, Kyra, like, she is probably a closer personification of me as a person and how I go about life than I am in real life, living in a small town in the Midwest, right? This to me is who I really am. And because of that, you know, I do tend to take her pretty seriously. So there's a lot of expectations towards, you know, certain types of role play with her. And, you know, I have to be honest and stamp it out sometimes, and be very, very upfront about what kinds of role play I want to do, who I'm interested in, what kind of relationships I want, that kind of thing. And most of that's laid out on card too. Like, she's a relic hunter, she is an explorer. She's not going to be a part of a harem anytime soon. Right? For me, the relationship kind of aspect of it is very monogamous, which on a server like this can be actually kind of a rarity. So, you know, it's just about honesty, and it's about being upfront with it. To be honest, I don't really run into many issues with it. Most people are just like, oh, okay. You know, that's cool. And then we move on and do something else, right? So, you know, there are going to be expectations, and there are going to be, you know, favorites in terms of types of characters people want to interact with. But again, don't ever be discouraged from playing what you want to play. You know, just like everyone else here, I feel like Final Fantasy in particular is it's very important to a lot of people, and for a lot of people, their characters are them to a certain point, or they're who they want to be. So, you know, if you're that kind of role player and you want to take it, you know, seriously, you're not just looking for, you know, a fun night out or something like that. You know, be honest with yourself and be honest with others. And most people are pretty receptive to it. But yeah, it's kind of my little rant about that. But yeah, in terms of like female roles and whatnot, I love female rows. Yeah, bring them on by all means. Some of my favorite role players have been femros, but you know, it's just sadly the nature of the game that they're just not super popular. I don't know why. I think they're great. Who doesn't love Merle, right? She's awesome. Bring back her chain smoking voice. But yeah, it's just an extension of the game in general. It's not necessarily something that's your fault or something that's role player's fault. You know, I'm sure depending on what the design looks like, I have a feeling the Roth gals, that's got to cause some trouble with some of the community. Just just a flood of suspiciously wealthy furries starting Final Fantasy XIV for the first time, right? I am excited about it though, but that's gonna shake the game up a little bit. What's a good RP server? I heard Goblin is a go-to. So yeah, pretty much all of Crystal. I mean, it's not necessarily as big of an issue nowadays. Now that DC travel is open, the big two are Balmung and Mateus. Those were the two big servers that came through the WoW Exoduses, and they're absolutely massive. So yeah, pretty much anyone on Crystal is going to be pretty good. I would say if you do come to Crystal, Zalera is probably... It's like the weird one that's like, it has a lot of RP, but it's also kind of like a raid server as well. Balmung is probably... It's got a good mix of everything. It is a little bit trickier to make characters on it because of the lockouts and that kind of thing, so kind of keep that in mind. I've never had trouble raiding on Balmung. I've said this a billion times here. Crystal has a smaller raiding community, but if you like raiding, the quality here I think is a little bit higher than the other servers, other data centers, just because with the smaller community, it means the people that want to raid are actively seeking it out. So yeah, you're not going to have as many people in the party finder at any given time, but typically you're going to have good quality in there. So you can raid wherever now. It's not necessarily a big issue with DC travel, but if you are looking for, you know, that good mix, Zalera is a good option. Balmung is good. I mean, really anywhere on the DC, but yeah, anywhere on Crystal. Crystal is like the role-playing hub. Now that said, I do have alts on Primal because the big Something Awful guild is over on Primal as well. And to be honest, I see roleplay there too. I'll open Party Finder, and obviously it's not going to have a ton of pages, right? To be honest, this is a quiet night. On, a weekend night, you'll see 120, 125 listings here. So this is a quiet night. But I mean, I'll still see, 10 or so RP listings, maybe a few more than that on Primal. I haven't checked Aether. I don't really know what their scene is like. But yeah, Primal has RP as well. That's the cool thing with the housing. Man, WoW is so dumb for not having housing, because it is single-handedly the most important factor with roleplay here, man. It completely changes the game. You can roleplay wherever you want. Now, in terms of other data centers, I genuinely have no clue. I have no clue what the big RP server is on EU, anything along those lines. So you're kind of on your own in terms of those. But yeah, there you go. There's your answer. Crystal, everybody. Yeah, another comment saying if you picked male or female rogue, just give up. People like Lalafell. There are a lot of Lalafell characters, but the big thing with Lalafell to kind of keep in mind, and very important, a lot of venues do not allow Lalafell for obvious reasons. I'm not going to get into it. Again, you can make your own judgments on that. Yes, keep in mind, if you do play Lalafell, a lot of venues will not allow them. So that's another one to kind of keep in mind. And I have had a lot of people get super mad about that. But I mean, that's something personally I wholeheartedly support. I know, Lalafell's in the game. They're not children. A lot of them are chain-smoking adults. You can go into a whole thing about Costa del Sol, right? But obviously, for the sake of their own security, most venues are not going to allow it. I actually left my own FC, my last FC that I co-founded, because of that. Some of the officers were very pro Lalafell, we'll put it that way. So yeah, if you're gonna play Lalafell, just kind of keep that in mind. You will probably be locked out of several venues. Now that doesn't mean you can't play Lalafell. You're just going to be probably restricted from certain venues. And that's, only if you're looking into a certain aspect of roleplay, right? If you're just playing your own and you want to be part of an adventuring FC, or you want to be a bartender or a club owner or something like that, go ham. There's a lot of great Lalafell role players out there. But they also do it with the understanding of role-playing rules and etiquette there, right? And again, a lot of that's not your character. It's to protect their FC more than anything else, because it can get very slippery, slopey very quickly. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind, right? But yeah, that's kind of I think most of the questions that I had out initially here. I don't see any other ones on here. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions on your own, just feel free to let me know. I am more than happy to kind of answer them as best as possible. Right? But yeah, so when it comes to what's going on nowadays, a lot of it's the club scene, more than anything else, which I'm not big on the club scene at all, so I don't really know what's going on with them. It's something that's kind of overtaken a lot of the roleplay scene. And the thing with the clubs is, if you want to go in club one night, a lot of it is not necessarily roleplay. It's just a place to turn on a Twitch DJ and dance an AFK on the floor, right? Now, that doesn't mean you can't find roleplay there. A lot of these venues have like balcony areas, or obviously the entry area or bar area. And usually these big venues, you can still find a lot of RP in those areas. You just probably won't RP a ton on the floor itself. So if you do like the idea of being part of the community, and Reach did the whole thing when he first started playing Final Fantasy, that's kind of what those are for. Like, they're technically RP, but they're kind of not. It's more just like a big social gathering, right? So kind of keep that in mind if you want to check out some of the big clubs. Not all of them are necessarily RP. Um, they're treated just like almost real clubs, and usually someone is spamming their link to their Twitch DJ or something like that, or spamming announcements the entire time. It's very loosey goosey in terms of roleplay. If you want more serious roleplay, you usually have to go for the smaller stuff. So like the bathhouses are always good. Um, Typically, it's just kind of a general rule. It's not 100%, but generally, if they're using the big block letters like this, it's probably a club. Read the whole description because that's not always the case. I know Ringo Bathhouse uses them sometimes, and they're definitely not a club. They're a bathhouse, right? Cat's Diner, probably not a club. But like Temple of Mefina, I've been there a couple of times. Like that is obviously not a club. It's very specific. They're probably going to have a lot of fun with the next Alliance raid. But yeah, it's a church venue, right? So they actually have like a church service. Like they have other sessions too. It is Menfino, right? But they actually do have a church service. So like they're a smaller group. Step Bath House is a smaller one. Can't remember. I don't know if they're still open tonight or not. There's a sushi bar, Third Eye Sushi. One of the regular posters from my old WoW server is a bartender there, and yeah, they're a smaller venue that's it's more personal and looking for actual roleplay, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. Usually they will specifically say if they are a club or a gambling hall. Gambling halls are always kind of weird. So you have the dance clubs that are always big. The gambling halls are also very, very large. But unlike a club, most of the gambling halls are pretty RP focused. I can't think of too many gambling halls that I've been to that where the RP was not the main focus. It's not like a dance club where people just AFK the entire time. It's a little different for depending on the gambling club, but I absolutely do find some good RP there every now and then. And usually it's pretty cool. They've got a lot of dice games and stuff, and the rules will be posted on their card, or you can ask one of the bartenders about the game. But usually it just uses the role system. It's almost all dice games. Maybe they might have actual triple triad tournaments or actual mahjong tournaments. Those are kind of rare because they take a little bit more time and they're a little bit harder to set up. But yeah, they're really cool if you're big into casinos and that kind of stuff. So that's another option. Taverns are almost always smaller venues, right? But yeah, usually it's pretty easy to tell right off the bat the differences between the clubs and the smaller RP focused venues. Yeah, these venues are really the main way, I would say, of actually finding RP. I would say about 99% of the RP that I do, it's because I'm looking here one night on a weekend or something like that, and thinking, I want to RP, so I start immediately looking through Party Finder to see where to go. I'm not just standing here in the quicksand. I'm waiting for walk-ups. I'm not going up to random people or something like that. I'm going to a venue that feels very specific to my character, something that my character would actually enjoy and like, and someplace that I think is going to be intimate enough to have actual conversations. So that's usually how I end up getting my RP started, more than anything else. Easily the most important thing is to learn is how to navigate the Party Finder listings. Unfortunately, the other big thing is these clubs putting multiple listings on here. So like it says 35, it's probably closer to like 27-ish actual different venues right now because so many of these are doubles. I wish they would kind of crack down on that a little bit more in terms of multiple listings, but it is what it is. But yeah, it'll get super busy on the weekends. Middle of the week, even with it being kind of a holiday right now, not a whole lot going on. But yeah, I find a lot of good stuff here. Usually they'll have their cards listed here. You get a couple of different ones up here. They'll list if they're 18 plus or if it's safe for work like this. So kind of check them out. But yeah, those cards are probably the most important thing into learning about a particular venue and what their theme is. But there's all kinds of different options. You know, taverns are probably the most important. The bathhouses and taverns are probably the two biggest. But occasionally have very specific themed taverns. Like there's one that's like a speakeasy that pops up every now and then. And there's a lot that do like mafia or mob themed taverns, or you know there might be a hook in their card that's like it's a front, you know, something like that. So usually they have some fun with it. You know, there are a lot of just kind of generic restaurants and taverns, but there's also a lot of that are kind of like themed in a way that's pretty cool. I've seen some pretty good cards out there. Temple of the Menfine is kind of cool if you're into that kind of thing, just because I've never really seen a whole lot of like church venues, especially like related to the 12 and with everything going on with the alliance raids and everything right now. So that was really cool to see pop up. You know, with new venues like that, I'm always kind of worried whether or not they're going to make it. But yeah, they've been going strong for a few months now, and yeah, very cool venue to check out. I see a lot of bookstores. Bookstores are usually a lot of fun. Bookstores, um, cafes. There are a few maid cafes. Of course there are. Why wouldn't there be, right? But the bookstores are kind of cool. You know, I've said a billion times in real life, I wish I could have a 24-hour bookstore. That's like my dream business to run is a 24-hour bookstore and coffee shop. But can't quite do that where I'm at or with my money now. But I can do it in game, you know. So yeah, you find some cool stuff out there every now and then. But yeah, if you want to, if you really want to try role playing, you know, you can put walk up tells and you might have a little bit of luck. But your best option is to check Party Finder and go check out stuff there, right? All right. So there you have it. Just kind of a basic Q&A. Let me see here. Where did my comments go? Sorry, I accidentally closed it out again. All right. Let's see. I know there were some from the old WoW video that I made that was also still pretty relevant to this video. Let me bring that up real quick, and we'll go from there. You know, I'm not actually gonna roleplay on stream. You know, if you're looking for that, I'm sorry. It's a little awkward. Like you can't even see my chat, right? Where is it? There we go. Beginner's Guide to WoW roleplay. There we go. All right. Now play looks like an interesting change of pace. Terrible imagination come up with a decent backstory and would have loved to have tried this. So, you know, that's always a tricky part in kind of a big roadblock for a lot of people is they feel like their character should be more detailed than they actually are. You really don't need a whole lot. You know, like I said in the guide, it can be a huge detailed backstory. You know, a lot of the times my characters might have a pretty big backstory, but I'm also a writer in real life. Like, that's my degree, right? A lot of people begin role-playing the moment they choose their character because they like what class it is. Like, it can be as simple as that. Like, you just want to be a big fancy marauder. You know, the whole basis of the game is that you're just kind of an adventurer starting out and then eventually kind of steamroll from there. But most people just kind of keep it at that adventurer phase. Before the Warrior of Light and all of that good stuff. They're just a basic adventurer just trying to make a living, right? It really does not have to be all that detailed. So if you feel like you're not doing well because you don't have a big intricate backstory, don't worry about it, man. Just you can come up with something super basic. You know, to be completely honest, like Kyra here is been my main for ages. She does not have a big backstory. If you want, you know, the character backstory, go read my books that I published, and you'll see where her backstory came from there. In terms of the actual in-game stuff, she's Lara Croft. That's really about it. There you go. That's her backstory. She's Lara Croft. It's really about as far as as I've gotten into it. You know, there's RPers that do take it super seriously, and like if anything happens to their character, they get injured or something like that, or they enter a relationship, like that becomes canon, and they write it down in their notebook, and you know that becomes a major part of their character storyline. Me personally, I don't do that, and I still have just as much fun role playing, right? You know, it's different if I do want to make like a campaign, if I'm doing a longer storyline, you know, the things that happen within that storyline, just like a D&D campaign, are going to be canon. But once that storyline is over, eh, that's about it. Um, you know, it might be brought up in future storylines, whatever happened during that event. It might have some effect on my FC or anything. But I'm not one of those people that role plays under this assumption that like everything that happens to my character becomes canon and it affects, you know, everything 2 years down the line, and you know I have big notes and all of that stuff. You know, it's fine if you like that kind of stuff, absolutely. If you enjoy that kind of thing and like you have everything that's happened to your character over the past 7 years all written down, and it's all, you know, canon to your character, and everything that happens to your character is super serious, and you role play that out, absolutely. Like I'm not really a character who's going to be like, oh, I broke my arm in this storyline, and then I take that into my walk-up roleplay, right? You know, I might do that for some small stuff here and there. You know, I might reference a storyline that I'm doing. Like if I break my arm in a you know, a campaign story, and then I want to go out clubbing that night, I'm not gonna carry that over into the role playing venue, not for the most part. Um, I will bring it back when it's time to do the campaign again, of course. But I'm not going to take that into other parts. I try keeping everything segmented, right? And that's just a different style of roleplay. You know, there's a billion different types of styles of roleplay, right? You don't necessarily have to stick to one thing. Pretty much every time I log in, it's beginning a new story for me. You know, especially as a walk-up role player. I don't have like a long-term vision for Kyra or anything like that. You know, it'd be different maybe if I entered an FC or I made some long-term contacts or something like that. Then I might be more willing to do those kind of things. But as someone who primarily just does casual walk-up role play, every day that I log in is going to be a new storyline, right? It's just like if I go out to a bar at night. Yeah, I went out playing billiards with my buddy on Christmas Eve, right? You know, we kind of started fresh. Whatever happened that night was just to that night. Um, we're not gonna be talking about the billiards game, you know, every time we meet for the next 3 months. It's just not how it works, you know. You have your bar buddies, you know, you have your drinking buddies that you go out with, and you see them that night, and then you go back to work the next day, and you know, that's life. Um, so yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. You know, and it's more towards people who are feeling more intimidated about role play, because of things like that. Obviously, if you're an experienced role player, or you're an experienced writer who's used to doing those kind of things, that kind of advice is probably useless to you because you already know all of it. I'm more speaking to people who feel like they might be intimidated because they don't have a huge backstory to their character, right? Don't feel like you have to do that. You know, those big backstories can give your characters some interesting hooks. It might give other characters a reason to come up and talk to you, but it's not necessarily super necessary. It is perfectly fine, just like in real life, to just log in, go out to the bar for the night, and then come back home. That is a perfectly acceptable way to roleplay. Might not be the most interesting, might not be, you know, the most engaging storyline, but as long as you are having fun, that's all that matters, right? Let's see. Let's see. Interact in tavern. Don't know how to approach or even greet them, as I wouldn't want to offend anyone. Yeah, so I mean it's the same thing as real life, right? If you don't know, you don't know how to approach someone, you overhear a conversation, you're not sure like how to discuss it. Um, it's just like in real life. Like you can kind of tell the conversations that people are open to discussing. Like if two people are like sitting in a corner talking amongst themselves, you would not go up and just like randomly talk to them, right? But if there's a bunch of people at a bar talking to the bartender, more than likely they're more willing to accept people kind of jutting into their conversations, right? Like that's why you sit at the bar is so that you can talk with the bartender and talk with the people around you, right? So it's kind of like real life, and it is hard. Like I'm not great at that in real life. I'm not great at just like approaching strangers and talking randomly, but generally if you're just kind of like out in public, you can kind of tell when a conversation is supposed to be private versus, if someone is just kind of talking aloud or is open to other conversations, right? So you just kind of got to feel it out. It takes practice. It's not something that you're going to be able to just hop in and do one day, but it all begins with one step. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So yeah, usually if I want to talk with random people and enter conversations that other people are having, that's when I sit at the bar. Yeah, it's kind of what that's for. um, so yeah, there you go. Uh, let's see. One important thing is to try and stick to the lore. This is more like WoW specific. I feel like most people are pretty good about sticking to the lore in Final Fantasy, just because it's so much easier to just kind of be a generic adventurer, I feel like. There's not as many like named mobs just like sitting out in the world, you know? If I'm in the quicksand and Ul'dah, like Momodi's really about it. The Sultana's not sitting at the chairs with all of us, right? Her model's elsewhere. So it does make it a little bit easier, right? But honestly, who cares? Who cares about sticking to the lore? It would be one thing if it's like, again, kind of goes back to what we discussed at the very, very beginning. If your character's breaking the lore so much that they're just kind of an annoying character, that's one thing. But if you're breaking in the lore in a way that's like enjoyable and you're very set in how you want your character to be, that can be fun. Who cares, man? Like it's always kind of like fluid in terms of like where we're even at timeline wise when it comes to like the collective conscious of role playing. So some people are like, okay, 2 weeks after the patch hits, then the patch is canon. Other people are like, patch isn't canon until the next patch comes out. Most people are not playing Warriors of Light or anything like that, but there was a funny meme the other day and I saw pop up where like someone did the copy pasta of I'm role playing, and since rezzing is not in the game, I will not be role playing with rezzes, right? Rezzes are not lore compliant. But then they came back and it's like, also, I'm playing a Union foreman from 1950s Detroit. That's funny. I would enjoy that a lot if someone came into my dungeon role playing a Union foreman from 1950s Detroit. That would be the funniest thing in the world to me. And you know what? If you can make that work, like outside of a dungeon, go ham. I really would not care. I would probably laugh at it. You're probably not going to be invited into any long term storylines. But there are some people that don't treat it as a meme. Like they genuinely want to roleplay that kind of character, and are able to do long-term storylines and stuff like that. So, yeah, who cares about the lore, man? To me, the people who are super uptight about lore are the kinds of people that I do not like role-playing with, personally. It's kind of like backseaters, when you're playing Elden Ring and the people are backseating your chat. That's what that feels like to me. You're backseating role playing. It's just for fun, man. So, So that's just me personally. Some people are really big into the lore. And you know what? If you're big into the lore and you don't want to play with people who are breaking the lore, that is your choice. That is absolutely your way to roleplay. But don't come over and start arguing with them that they're breaking the lore, right? And just separate to yourselves and ignore each other if you want. That's your choice. No reason to judge someone else's style of roleplay, right? That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves right there is the backseating, right? Um, let's see, overpowered situations. Not really too much of a big deal here. I don't see too many RP fights. People are usually a little bit more respectful of that kind of thing in Final Fantasy. I've seen a couple bar brawls, but not super often, and certainly no god modding. I think a lot of it is because there are actual like pit fight venues that you can go to. Like I didn't see any tonight, but yeah, there's a couple every week here on Crystal that are fight clubs. And because you have those and they have strict rules in terms of how the fights go, again, it all comes down to the role system. They have a number system worked out, and you just slash roll for each action. I feel like that kind of takes away from some of the just like the random bar fights that happen out there. But mostly, I think it's just people here don't tolerate characters who are assholes as much. I think that genuinely is a big part of it. You still have a couple like edgelords out and about, but I don't see it nearly as much as I did in World of Warcraft. I don't know if it's just because the player base is a little older or what. I really don't know what the reason for it would be, but even when I do see bar fights break out, usually it's taken care of, and usually the person starting the fight is doing it for a reason. 90% of the bar fights that I've seen is because it's part of some storyline that the regular patrons don't know about, and then that's something with the host venue, the host FC, is they've got something going on with it. So usually the fight ends up ending, and that leads to something else in their storyline. It just happens to be during an open night, right? Because there's people to watch. It's almost like dinner theater, if you think of it that way. A lot of the times that I've seen fights break out like that, it really is kind of like dinner theater. And really, a lot of these tavern venues in general, that's probably the best way to think about it, is kind of like dinner theater. Some venues host shows while you're reading, and for some, the RP is the theater aspect of it themselves. And the hosts are the characters that you're interacting with. It really is probably the best way to think about it. I mean, it's not a surprise considering a lot of role players, and I mean a lot of role players, are former theater kids. I was that was my first go around in college, was as a theater kid. Yeah, so it's not really too much of a surprise. But yeah, I haven't seen too many issues with fights. Let's see, a lot of these are kind of, I'm reading through the old WoW roleplay guide that I made, but a lot of them are kind of like faction specific. We don't really have factions here. I will say that like when it comes to the different grand companies, I don't really see that really come up all that often. The only ones that I think that I can really say have a big roleplay presence is the Immortal Flames. I do see a few FCs that do roleplay as Immortal Flames, like captains or whatever. And I think a large part of that is just because the Quicksand is based in Ul'dah. But I haven't really seen too many Maelstroms or anything like that. I don't know why. It's really not a big issue. So, that is an option, though, if you want... Okay. If you want to roleplay as, like, a Grand Company member, absolutely. Now, I have seen the Grand Companies as, like, part of someone's backstory, but I haven't really seen any, like, FCs where that's, like, the main focus. So yeah, that's, like, the closest thing to factions that I can think of. Yeah. Yeah, let's see. We don't really do add-ons here. Let's see. A lot of people making fun of Goldshire. You know, I've talked about that before. Again, I brought it up earlier this video. A lot of it's because of the of how Crystal got its start in the makeup of different groups here. Yeah, people don't really care. Like ERP and sexy characters and that kind of thing. Who cares? Like it's just kind of like part of a mainstay here. You know, I used to be one of those people. I used to make fun of ERP so much, man. Back in the WoW days, like, look at these weirdos. Eh. But after coming here, it's really not a big deal. Like, I think it's because it is so open that people just don't really care about it. Like yeah, it happens. Yeah, there's some people that are into it, but even among the tourists that come here to check out the quicksand, it doesn't seem nearly quite the same as it does in Goldshire. It's just kind of like, okay, yeah, what of it? I mean, you still have shout chat, but shout chat's gonna be shout chat no matter what, right? It's basically our version of Baron's chat. But when it actually comes to like getting into the weeds with personalities and that kind of thing, like no one really cares. No one really thinks it's weird. It is what it is. Some of the stuff people get up to are that's just the internet in general at this point, right? But in terms of like it actually existing, nah, no one really cares all that much. Let's see. In fact, there's a whole cottage industry of venues that charge a very large amount of actual gil for those services, right? You can make a lot of money. I've been part of one of those guilds. That was one of the first things that I joined whenever I first started role playing in Final Fantasy. Was I was one of the I was a worker in one of those guilds, and yeah, it was an experience. Stuff that I can't really get into on YouTube, but you see some weird shit, man. Put it that way. You can make some good money and make some good friends doing it that way too. But yeah, I think that's just about it. I don't really see like too many other like really RP specific questions, just kind of general comments. But yeah, I mean, if you guys ever have any other questions or anything like that, feel free to drop a note in the comments and I'll try and answer it whenever I get to it. You know, I just kind of wanted to go through and kind of address a couple of things that I saw, you know, over the past couple months. I figured, you know, might as well go a little bit more in detail with a couple of these things in case people are intimidated or are still a little confused about how the whole thing works. Again, it's just my perspective. There's a billion different guides to RP out there, some that are, you know, even more in depth than I am. It's just kind of something that I like to discuss, you know, time to time. I'm not like an RP YouTuber or anything like that. It's just something I enjoy doing in the middle of all of my other Final Fantasy streaming, I guess. But yeah, I hope that answered a few questions. I think we'll go ahead and call it a night because it is getting a little late out and I'm kind of hungry. But I wanted to hop in, say hi, and see what everyone was up to. Like I said, hopefully we will be back with the new microphones sooner than later by the end of the week. I don't know when the next stream is going to be. If it hasn't arrived tomorrow, we might hop into another stream. I don't know, maybe do a little bit more FF6 or something like that. But when we do get the microphone in, I will have to take a day or two to like get the whole setup and redo a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, soon, hopefully this really compressed sound is going to be going away. This new microphone is going to be a beast. But thanks a ton for hanging out with me tonight, and I hope you guys had a happy holidays. And hopefully I will see you again before the new year. But you guys take care and have a good night.